We are live.
Yay, I am back in the land of the living again. I apologize for those that didn't we didn't do a live stream Monday. I had COVID, was feeling better Friday, and then ended up catching the mother in law's cold. So um, it took me back down the sickness path, and I'm back on the way back up. So I apologize for missing Monday. But I am old new dude, and he is.
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son.
And this is the first Theon chapter in A Clash of Kings.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite Theon chapter, but there's some things in there
Oh,
that,
definitely not. I mean, it's Theon and Clash, and Theon and Clash is the worst.
yeah, this is true. But
Um,
if you've seen any of these, we start with the brains of the operation, which is Richard, who will say what he saw with the chapter, and then I'll jump in with my stupid stuff. Uh, there's Lizzie. Good to see
Glad to see you
you.
on the better end of the stick. Yeah,
I
yeah.
trust me. Yeah,
I'm kind of glad to hear that it was a cold and not a COVID relapse because it seems
I,
less
I,
likely to cause permanent problems.
yeah. Well, like I told you off air, last year it was COVID, and then I caught pneumonia. And I'm just glad it wasn't pneumonia. I didn't want to go back to the hospital. I don't do hospitals very well. Um, the last time I was in a hospital, they tried to poison me. They tried to incubate me when I didn't need. There's so many things that went wrong. If I was out of it, would have done a really bad job on me. But uh, I'm glad to be among the land of the living, and I am so glad to be back on with the live stream because I didn't get to do book club because I started feeling worse, so I hadn't had to get a chance to talk to anybody about a song of ice and fire. So I really, really missed this. So, like I said, Richard will start it off, and then I'll jump in. So
Great to have you
uh,
back and great to be back.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the words, Lizzie, and take it away, Richard.
So in this chapter, Balon chooses to pay the iron price. There was no safe anchorage at Pike, but Theon Greyjoy wished to look on his father's castle from the sea, to see it as he had seen it last, 10 years before, when Robert Baratheon's war galley had borne him away to be a ward of Eddard Stark. On that day he had stood beside the rail, listening to the stroke of the oars and the pounding of the master's drum, while he watched Pike dwindle in the distance. Now he wanted to see it grow larger, to rise from the sea before him. Obedient to his wishes, the Muraham beat her way past the point, with her sails snapping and her captain cursing the wind and his crew and the follies of high-born lordlings. Theon drew the Theon drew the hood of his cloak up against the spray and looked for home. It's kind of funny how Theon seems to realize what a folly this is, but Theon looks for home, but his home is not here.
Yeah,
Is looked for home. I like the looked for home comment, right? Because he looks for it, but yeah.
yeah, he ain't gonna find it. You remember back in it was the on the King's Road with Robert and Ned, and Robert puts that big old hood over his hair, his ears, where he can't hear what Ned's saying. And it
Yeah,
was kind of a Robert's not going to listen to Ned is basically what that little sentence
yeah,
was telling us.
yeah. Well,
Well,
and
this,
this also people who believe in the the Fight Club theory that this is one of the things that they would cite, right? Is that Theon is the hooded man kind of thing.
well, I mean, the last sentence in that one, Theon drew the hood of his cloak up against the spray. He's protecting himself from the salt.
Right,
He's no longer an ironborn. He's no
right.
longer.
Ironborn would Ironborn do that, or would they enjoy the spray? Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
they
good
would let
point.
it hit their face. I mean, they would. I mean, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. How about that?
there's a lot of that in this chapter. What you say?
Boy, this is a terrible chapter. Really see how truly vapid he can be. Whole thing is just gross. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There was somebody within the past several months that had posted it. It generated a lot of chat on Twitteros where they were saying that anybody who likes gets us to answer for this, and it's like really? Does anybody who likes Theon have to answer for the captain's daughter? Does anybody who likes Jamie have to answer for Jory? I mean, yeah, yeah, it's pretty terrible. But people change and people grow, and Theon is very much a changed man through this story. So and we've talked before about how one of the things that's nice about Sansa and Jamie and Theon is that they have a lot of room to grow
Yeah.
as they're so
Well,
terrible at the start.
I remember saying, I think it was Friday, that it depends on how we feel about a character on whether we give them a pass.
Yep.
Almost instantly, everybody, Ned Stark is good as gold, but first time we see him, he chops a man's head off. I mean, Jamie pushes
Right.
Brandon out the window, but later
A
on,
guy, right, a guy for speaking madness who's not speaking madness, right? Who's
yeah.
really tried to tell them what's going on. As I already told old new dude, this is my shade of the evening here. It's actually Neosport, but anyway. The point of land on which the Greyjoys had raised their fortress had once thrust like a sword into the bowels of the ocean, but the waves had hammered at it day and night until the land broke and shattered. George does love his shattered swords, and he'll give us another one here in just again.
Yeah. Also, the hammering on the sword, the forging of a sword, the hammering.
Yep, absolutely. Once you make a man forget his name, you can grow him into anything you want. LOL, RIP, Reek.
There you
go. The sea tower rose from the outmost island at the point of the broken sword, the oldest part of the castle, round and tall, the sheer-sided pillar on which it stood half eaten through by the endless battering of the waves. There it is again, just in case we missed it, and notice that the oldest part of the castle is round and tall. So once again, one of these ancient pre-Andal structures, the oldest of those tend to be round towers.
like the first tower at Winterfell.
Right, so it sort of hints at the idea that actually the technology went backwards, right? Theon had never seen a more stirring sight. In the sky behind the castle, the fine red tail of the comet was visible through thin, scuttling clouds. All the way from Riverrun to Seaguard, the Malastard had argued about its meaning. It is my comet, Theon told himself, sliding a hand into his fur-lined cloak to touch the oilskin pouch snug in its pocket. Inside was the letter Robb Stark had given him, paper as good as a crown. I know I said everyone is right about the comet, but Theon and the Ironborn might be the exception. Like, we hear a lot about... also, we hear a lot about paper shields in the story, but this is a paper crown.
Yeah.
Ironborn captains were proud and willful, and did not go in awe of a man's blood. The islands were too small for awe, and a longship smaller still. If every captain was a king aboard his own ship, as was often said, it was small wonder they named the islands the land of 10,000 kings. And when you have seen your kings shit over the rail and turn green in a storm, it was hard to bend the knee and pretend they were gods. The drowned god makes men, old King Euron Redhand had once said, thousands of years ago, but it's men who make crowns. So the islands have some terrible aspects and some amazing democratic aspects.
Going back with the description of the castle and everything, and I think I mentioned this in book club when we did this chapter, and chances are it's not what I'm thinking of, but the jagged crown, black with soot from its nightly watchfires, and that just made me think of the Faith of R'hllor. I know it's probably
I thought about that too, and there's also a lot of you actually get a lot of fire and blood with the Ironborn as well. And in fact, I think
fire and blood is mentioned like 3 or 4 times in the chapter.
Red and black.
Yeah,
Euron's ship is actually red and black. And so I think that the concept of slavery. I think part of the concept is slavers are taking on thralls and conquering and living off of the fruits of better people is sort of what the others represent, right? They sort of represent taking away of life and freedom. And the Ironborn have a lot of that imagery, especially with the whole concept of the ground god.
Well, something about their god that I never quite understood. Where's it at? Oh, it is the flame the drowned god brought from the sea. How the hell you bring a flame from sea? And this is another religion that has fire in it, even though it's supposedly the drowned god.
Right. Wouldn't the storm god and his lightning be what would cause it? Yeah, that's a good point.
Sorry.
A ward in name, a hostage in truth. Half his days a hostage, but no longer. His life was his own again, and nowhere a Stark to be seen. So he's already turning the Starks before he even gets there.
Yeah, he's done got it all figured out in his head. He's done
Right,
schemed it.
right. He still has that same resentment of the Starks, even as he's claiming to be loyal to them and so forth.
Yeah.
A man had his rock wife, his true bride, ironborn like himself, but he had his salt wives too, women captured on raids. Polygamy in this story? I wonder if there's any significance. See Triplet Targaryens episode 1. In those days, the Ironborn did not work mines. That was labor for the captives brought back from the hostings. And so too the sorry business of farming and tending goats and sheep. War was an Iron Man's proper trade. The Drowned God had made them to reave and rape, to carve out kingdoms and write their names in fire and blood and song. That's two with the shirt. I think George is deliberately comparing conquering and enslaving for the minds of the Valerians and with the fire and blood and so forth. I think, as we talked about, that the Valerians enslaving people, the others, the whole concept that you're building on top of other, the existing civilizations and taking from them and taking their freedom and putting them to work for you is really a concept of the others, I think.
It makes you wonder about the forming of the Iron Islands when, especially in this chapter, fire and blood is mentioned several times.
Mm-hmm.
We get the flame imagery from their god. You get the red and black. I mean, there's a lot of Targaryen and possibly even R'hllor imagery just in this one chapter alone, as far as the Ironborn go.
Yeah. Yep. Theon's father numbered among his titles the style of Lord Reaper, and the Greyjoy lords boasted that we do not so. So these are the worst words, right? Maybe Black Heron succeeded because he wasn't as dumb as a Greyjoy. Right. I mean, obviously, if you're taking over all the Riverlands, you're doing it because you want to sow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, stop to think about the Black Heron took over the Riverlands, and Theon is basically laying Lannisport and Casterly Rock at Balon Greyjoy's feet.
Yep.
The situations could not be more ripe.
Right,
you know?
right. I mean, you need to have allies to succeed to be able to hold these things. And so Theon's plan is honestly much better than Balon's. But anyway,
without doubt.
The sea meant freedom to the men of the Iron Islands. He'd forgotten that until the Merham had raised sail at Seaguard. The sounds brought old feelings back: the creak of wood and rope, the captain's shouted commands, the snap of the sails as the wind filled them, each as familiar as the beating of his own heart, and as comforting. I must remember this, Theon vowed to himself. I must never go far from the sea again. Spoiler, he will not keep his vow, and Ash will have to remind him.
Yeah. Those are some words that he should have definitely remembered.
I always feel so bad for women who get sent to marriages in the Iron Islands. The worst. Yep.
Oh.
That's Lizzie. I'm quoting.
Oh, okay.
I can't stay here now. He laced up his breeches. Why not? My father, she told him. Once you're gone, he'll punish me, my lord. He'll call me names and hit me. Theon swept his cloak off its peg and over his shoulders. Fathers are like that, he admitted as he pinned the folds of the silver clasp. Yes, we will see Theon has a father like that in this chapter. You're likely with child. It's not every man who has the honor of raising a king's bastard. I don't know if this will matter, but it certainly could, right? This is certainly something worth noting, right?
Yeah.
He saw the castle first, the stronghold of the Botleys. When he was a boy, it had been timber and wattle, where Robert Baratheon had razed the structure to the ground. Lords Swain, I don't know. Swain, I guess, had rebuilt in stone. For now, a small square keep crowned the hill. So this seems like another one of the we've had these three little pigs references before with the whole straw and sticks and straw and wood and stone.
Yeah.
Wex is a bastard nephew and Christopher is a son. So and eventually the rightful heir after his older brother reportedly died. So good to note the Botleys and their importance in our story.
Yeah.
When last he'd seen Lordsport, it had been a smoking wasteland, the skeletons of burnt longships and smashed galleys littering the stony shore like the bones of dead leviathans. So this is one of many clues of Naga's ribs, that Naga's ribs were actually from the hull of a weirwood ship.
Yeah.
I believe that to be Ashura symbolism, as Ashura went from being the sea dragon to the tree of life, and Naga's ribs are now considered to be like weirwood. I've discussed this previously in Triplet Occurrence, episode 1.
Now, when you say a weirwood ship, you mean that the skeleton of the ship was the weirwood, and the rest of it was regular wood?
Yeah, LML's talked about this multiple times, and they even talk about the turtle that the wildlings use as like a ship turned upside down, and this was historically what the Vikings did, right? They built their halls by when they would retire their ships and build it into a great hall by flipping it over like that. So this is sort of typical seafarer behavior. Lord Balon was no fool either. He might well have guessed why his son was coming home at long last and acted accordingly. The thought did not please him. His father's war was long done and lost. This was Theon's hour, his plan, his glory, and in time his crown. Theon's arrogance is limitless.
Without a doubt.
Surely his father would have sent someone to meet him. Silas Sourmouth, the steward, Lord Botley, perhaps even Dagmar Cleftjaw. It would be good to look on Dagmar's hideous old face again. So I like the language every time it implies Dagmar as a legend. So even Dagmar, the Blackfish of the Iron Islands, the legendary uncle, still loyal to the stolen child. One of the funny things about Dagmar is he was supposed to be a distraction with zero chance of success, and now he holds the very council he was never supposed to be able to take, with no real explanation except perhaps the North refocusing on Winterfell. Right? I mean, if you trace through his story, the last we hear of him, he is going to launch this campaign that he knows is impossible to take to take the castle, and it's really just supposed to be a distraction. He's not supposed to succeed, but he does.
A legend.
Yep. A priest in the seawater robes of the drowned god was leading a pair of horses along the pebbled shore. That seems like that might be relevant. Do priests often bring 2 horses to the shore? You'd think you would notice that this is not a priestly behavior.
Yeah, he's too busy looking for his entourage.
Yeah, but he's so focused that he can't at how magnificent his return should be that he can't even spot it. We're out of Old Town, the captain called down, bearing apples and oranges. So I doubt oranges grow in Bravos' weather either, although we do see apples on the way to the wall from Winterfell, so maybe there's nothing that unusual about this whole. Plus, he didn't say that the apples and oranges were grown in Old Town. He's a trader.
Yeah.
My boy will go with you and show you the way. Your boy will not be needed, the deep voice called, nor your horse. I shall see my nephew back to his father's house. The speaker was the priest he had seen leading the horses along the shoreline. As the man approached, the small folk bent the knee, and Theon heard the innkeeper murmur, damp hair. I still say that should be hyphenated. Anyway, tall and thin, with fierce black eyes and a beak of a nose, the priest was garbed in mottled robes of green and gray and blue, the swimming colors of the drowned god. A water skin hung under his arm on a leather strap, and ropes of dried seaweed were braided through his waist-long black hair and untrimmed beard. A memory prodded at Theon. In one of his rare curt letters, Lord Balon had written of his youngest brother going down in a storm and turning holy when he washed up safe on shore. Meet future POV Aaron Damphair.
There you go.
Theon knelt. He had a purpose here and might need Aaron's help to achieve it. A crown was worth a little mud and horse shit on his breeches, he supposed. Typical Greyjoy pretending to kneel so he can try to claim a crown later. Let Theon, your servant, be born again from the sea as you were, Aaron Greyjoy intoned. Bless him with salt. Bless him with stone. Bless him with steel. Nephew, you still know the words? What is dead may never die, Theon said, remembering. What is dead may never die, his uncle echoed, but rises again harder and stronger. Stand. Theon stood, blinking back tears from the salt in his eyes. He's probably only crying from the salt, but it's ambiguous, as we like to say.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, after all that, and people asked him if he's worships the wolf gods, all that whatever stuff. They got Men fish the sea, dig the earth and die. Women birth children in the blood and pain and die. Night falls day. The wind and tides remain. The islands are as our God made them. And Theon's thoughts were gods with an S. He has grown grim. He says
Oh, good
he says
catch.
he says gods three
Good
times
catch.
in this chapter. As far as the in that same line, he says them a couple other times, but yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
Struck me as weird.
That's great. No, that's great. That points out that because we get that same thing with Davos noticing when people say gods when they should be saying God, and so you're right. It shows that he really has grown around people that say gods all the time to the point where he's well. On the other hand, they do talk about the ground god versus the storm god, so they're arguably a polytheistic religion anyway. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Will I find my sister and my lady mother at Pike? You will not. Your mother dwells on Harlaw with her own sister. It is less raw there, and her cough troubles her. Your sister has taken Blackland to Great Wick, with messages from your lord father. She will return ere long, you may be sure. He did not need to be told that Blackland was Ash's longship. He had not seen his sister in 10 years, but that much he knew of her. Odd that she would call it that when Robb Stark had a wolf named Greywind. Stark is gray and Greyjoy's black, he murmured, smiling, but it seems we're both windy. So I'm not sure what this implies. I think Robb is like dust in the wind. Maybe Ash is not. But I don't know. Maybe it just means that they're both a bunch of talk and not the true kings or something. I don't know. They're definitely full of hot air, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
He led men in war, hunted with a king, won honor in tourney melees, ridden with Brynden Blackfish and Great John Umber, fought in the Whispering Wood, bedded more girls than he could name, and yet this uncle was treating him as though he were still a child of 10. If my father makes plans for war, I must know of them. I'm not any man. I'm heir to Pike in the Iron Islands. As to that, his uncle said, we shall see. The words were slapped in the face. We shall see. My brothers are both dead. I'm my lord father's only living son. Your sister lives. Asha, he thought, confounded. She was 3 years older than Theon, yet still. A woman may inherit only if there is no male heir in the direct line. Inheritance rules and female equality are a common theme in these books.
Yep.
Lord Eddard had tried to play the father from time to time, but to Theon he'd always remained the man who brought blood and fire to Pike and taken him from his home. So, interesting Targaryen reference again, perhaps tying conquering to the Targaryens.
Yeah.
The Iron Islands lived in the past. The present was too hard and bitter to be borne. I kind of like when Theon criticizes the Ironborn.
Yeah. Well, it kind of shows how far from the Ironborn he's become.
Absolutely. They say the Red Comet is a herald of a new age, a messenger from the gods. A sign it is, the priest agreed, but from our God, not theirs. A burning brand it is, such as our people carried of old. It is the flame the drowned god brought from the sea, and it proclaims a rising tide. It is time to hoist our sails and go forth into the world with fire and sword, as he did. Theon smiled. I could not agree more. Okay, lots of people are wrong.
Yep, there you go.
The guards atop the battlements watched with strangers' eyes as Theon Greyjoy came home at last. So this line in particular beautifully captures Theon's lonely return. I think George goes, he gives lots of such things and talks about feeling strangers and not knowing and so forth, but this is my favorite one of them.
Yeah.
But Greyjoys were not murdered in Pike, except once in a great while by their brothers, and his brothers were both dead. And then a little later, to get to the sea tower on its crooked pillar, he had to cross 3 further bridges, each narrower than the one before. The last was made of rope and wood, and the wet salt wind made it sway underfoot like a living thing. Theon's heart was in his mouth by the time he was halfway across. A long way below, the waves threw up tall plumes of spray as they crashed against the rock. As a boy, he used to run across this bridge, even in the black of night. Boys believe nothing can hurt them, his doubt whispered. Grown men know better. Mm-hmm. So there's some nice foreshadowing there of Balon's reported death. My last Reddit post a couple of years ago was called Balon Greyjoy's The High Septon. And the one before that was called R plus L has 3 heads. Anyone familiar with our videos is probably not too surprised by those titles. At the sound of boots on stone, the Lord of the Iron Islands lifted his eyes to behold his last living son. He was smaller than Theon remembered him, and so gaunt. Balon Greyjoy had always been thin, but now he looked as though the gods had put him in a cauldron and boiled every spare ounce of flesh from his bones until nothing remained but hair and skin. Bone thin and bone hard he was, with a face that might have been chipped from flint. His eyes were flinty too, black and sharp, but the years and the salt winds had turned his hair the gray of a winter sea, flecked with white caps. Unbound, it hung past the small of the back. Three, she says. I mentioned R plus almost three heads. Anyway, so Tudos goes into great detail about how subtle George is at referring to the common practice of sailors going barefoot. Victarion and sometimes Asha seem to like boots, but in general, Ironborn tend to glance at people and either notice their footwear or declare them to be Ironborn. Toodles also lists many times where George tells us mud color is nearly black. And then let's run through some of Toodles' other comparisons. That I won't go through all of the discussion of them being short and thin with long gray hair, but Toodles goes into a lot of detail. We'll abbreviate that part. They're both short and thin. Yeah. Balon has, which is kind of weird because the rest of the Greyjoys tend to be tall and big, but Balon is clearly short and skinny. Balon has sharp eyes. The High Sparrow has suspicious eyes. Balon has bony hands. The High Sparrow has thin hands. Balon is bone hard. The High Sparrow has a hard look and hard eyes. Balon has flinty eyes. The High Sparrow's eyes were chips of flint. Balon's face is chipped from flint. Ash's nose is too sharp for her thin face. Aeron's nose is a beak and a shark's fin. The High Sparrow has a lean, sharp face and a sharply pointed face that's sharp-featured. So the High Sparrow's eyes are also described as brown as mud, whereas Balon's are black. Hence the reason Toodles points out all the times that we're told that mud is almost black-colored. Perhaps most interesting is the faceless man language that appears around the High Septon, with all the High Septons lacking names and claiming to be no one. He could be a faceless man wearing Balon's face. It's definitely possible. But with Euron seeming to have similar flying dreams as Bran, and therefore tied to the old gods, Aeron saved by the drowned god, and Victarion saved by the Lord of Light with his firearm. Right. It would complete the set for their older brother to have had a similar experience with the other major religion of Westeros. So it would actually make sense if the man that washed up without a face, the bloated body that was unrecognizable, a fat bloated body is probably not. I get that you can get bloated from seawater, but the point where this bone thin guy is that bloated, it sure seems likely that the literal faceless man that washed up was the faceless man. And that the one that miraculously survived was perhaps with some sort of religious awakening in the process, given the conversion to the fire god by one of the brothers, and the drowned god by another brother, and potentially to the old gods by the third. It would make a lot of sense if Balon was in fact the High Septon.
Well, I mean, they used to have a set on Pike. So I mean,
I think it's supposed to be a road to Damascus moment, right? I mean, that's clearly what has sort of happened with each of his brothers, right? They've had some sort of spiritual awakening. They've each had some sort of spiritual awakening with and embraced one of the gods, and so the one that's missing from the Greyjoys is and they're each sort of pushing the religion in a way, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that you can count Euron as sort of pushing his own religion, but it's certainly sort of an old gods style religion. Anyway,
what's the exact wording for the Ghost of High Heart, her vision of the swaying bridge with the faceless man with the drowned crow?
With the man without a face. Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Does she actually say that somebody dies, or is it?
Well, and I'm saying that I think one of them died. There is a bloated corpse without a face that washes up. I just think it's more. It just feels like it makes more sense for this bloated corpse to not be the skinny, the skinny short guy. It makes sense to me that the literal faceless man, because I think George likes this concept of a figurative thing becoming the literal thing, and so the faceless man literally becoming the man whose eyes have been eaten, who is faceless. Anyway, that's my thought on this thing. Is it feels likely that because why would the faceless man choose to wear Balon's face while becoming the High Septon, right? That feels a little bit of a bizarre choice, right?
Out of all the faces he could be.
Yeah, yeah. I think it makes more sense for him for it to literally be Balon.
Right.
Anyway,
I've never put a whole lot of much thought into that until just now. So
yeah.
I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. So it definitely.
I mean, either way, you tie it to the Faceless Man, right? He's symbolically tied it to the Faceless Man that George
Right.
has
Right.
the whole no one, no name. They want you to believe they're no one and so forth, right? I mean, he's put a lot of Faceless Man symbols around the High Septon, right? And so I get why Toodles thinks he's literally a Faceless Man and not really Balon,
Right.
but
Well,
I kind of think he's Balon anyway.
well, you've said enough that it's perked my curiosity without a doubt.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't really want Balon to be alive and obtaining political power, but because I certainly don't like Balon, but it feels like that fits the pattern. Anyway,
Okay.
what are you now? A man, Theon answered. Your blood and your air. Lord Balon grunted. We shall see. There it is again. Balon and Aeron are definitely on the same page here.
Yep.
Whether or not we'll still see if he's in the air. In the old way, women might decorate themselves with ornaments bought with coin, but a warrior wore only the jewelry he took off the corpses of enemies slain by his own hand, paying the iron price, it was called. Theon forgot, but crowns are ornaments too.
Yeah.
The pup says nothing about a reward, only that you speak for him, and I'm to listen, give him my sails and swords, and in return he will give me a crown. With flinty eyes lifted to me the sun's. He will give me a crown, he repeated, his voice growing sharp. A poor choice of words. What is meant is what is said. The boy will give me a crown, and what is given can be taken away. Lord Balon tossed the letter onto the brazier atop the necklace. The parchment curled, blackened, and took flame. So this nicely ties the paper crown to the necklace, right?
Yeah.
They're both ornaments being given. Have you gone mad? His father laid a stinging backhand across his cheek. Mind your tongue. You are not in Winterfell now, and I am not Rob the Boy that you should speak to me so. I am the Greyjoy, Lord Reaper of Pike, King of Salt and Rock, son of the Sea Wind, and no man gives me a crown. I pay the iron price. I will take my crown as Euron Redhand did 5,000 years ago. I guess for Theon, fathers are like that.
There you go.
I mean to carve out a kingdom with fire and sword, but not from the west, and not at the bidding of King Rob the Boy. Castle Rock is too strong, and Lord Tywin too cunning by half. Aye, we might take Lannisport, but we should never keep it. No, I hunger for a different plum, not so juicy sweet. To be sure, yet it hangs there, ripe and undefended. Where? Theon might have asked, but by then he knew. That Asha went along with this even dumber plan always seemed a bit off to me. You need allies to hold land, and Tywin is not a viable long-term choice for an ally.
Yeah.
Anyway, next up, we will finally check in on the Mother of Dragons.
Oh, not a bad chat.
And we'll meet Quaithe.
Yep.
Or as I like to call her, a Chardane.
I still hold my opinion on who a Chardane is, just for simple fact that I've seen. I don't know. I've believed her to be one or the other at different times, and the belief had the same weight, so I can't decide which way I want to go with it. So,
well, I just feel like that the language really ties her to she's referred to the first time we hear her name, she's referred to as the Shadow. The second time the cat thinks of her, she's referred to as the Shadowy Secret. This is Quaithe of the Shadow. If you buy the logic for why we know that the Reeds actually have red hair, makes it yeah. Right, we know why. If we understand why we know that the Reeds have that the Reeds actually have red hair, then we are literally being told that Quaithe has eyes the color of the Chardaine's eyes, and they're wet and shiny, which sounds like it's the same thing as laughing to me. So we're basically being told that she has laughing eyes of the same shade as the Chardane.
Mm.
We got a Char, it's the Shadow. We got a Char, it's the Shadowy Secret. She's Quaithe of the Shadow. She's got that perfect breast, right? I mean, we know that the Chardane is supposed to be beautiful, so we're sort of implying that Quaithe has this almost otherworldly beauty. So anyway, it's just I feel like those things all, and symbolically, she ought to be an almost godlike figure if she really does represent, Asher's
Also,
history.
her being masked takes away some of the descriptions that are given to Ashar, so it would help hide that she is Ashar to us, the reader. I mean, I understand.
And she's definitely supposed to be a Westerosi of some sort who's hiding their identity behind the mask, right?
Well, I mean, as far as I agree with the shadow binders hide their faces so they can't have a shadow.
But I agree with you that there ought to be something about Lemore and how she needs to hide and how she gave birth to someone and so forth, right? And the obvious explanation is she's one of the septas that gave birth to one of Oberyn's kids, but or that she's, I don't know. I still say that if the idea is that she's a wet nurse, the only wet nurse name that would mean anything to us is Wyla. But we think we believe that Wyla was supposed to have gone with John of Winterfell and then went back to nurse Ned, right?
Yeah.
The other Ned, Ned Dane. So
I have a theory on that. I don't know if you want to hear it.
Sure.
Wyla was never at Winterfell.
Some other wet nurse or something.
I say the babies, all three were born at the tower or at Winterfell.
At Winterfell, right?
Right. Rhaegar leaves. We got Lyanna, her three babies, Ashara, Jon. They're all at Winterfell.
We're never told that the wet nurse that was there was Wyla. We're never
right. I'm saying that when Lyanna and Ashara went south, so Lyanna could meet up with Rhaegar, they went to Starfall. Three babies, being sick from the travel, whatever. A wet nurse was needed, and Jon got breastfed by Wyla while he was at Starfall, and then that's where Ned is born, and then of course he got the wet nurse Wyla.
So you're thinking Wyla was always at Starfall?
Yeah, Wyla has never left Starfall. What does Lizzie say?
Lizzie always wants the theory, and she says Ashara was on the Shy Maid the whole time, laughing at all of us with her eyes. And Lizzie always wants the theory.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely always was there.
So I mean, it sure seems fairly definitive that Wyla at some point winds up in Starfall with Ned Dane. So it doesn't feel like she would be on the Shy Maid. Even though I still think that's the only wet nurse name that would mean anything to us. I do. I mean, there is the theory that she's the Mad Maid, that Hightower. Maybe there's no reason why she has to be up in the tower. That's certainly possible. I think Quaithe really has to be Ashara, just symbolically. But then I'm left wondering, well, then who is Septa Lemore? Anyway,
Septa Lemore is important enough that we, the reader, are questioning who she is.
Right. So, that's why you think that. I get the logic of why she would be Ashara, because the White Fawn isn't going to mean that much to us, or even the Mad Maid. They're just not going to be. It's not going to be the same impact, right, as it would be if she was Ashara. I get that, but I still say that because I see the specific clues that literally Quaithe has laughing eyes with the exact color of Ashara Dane, and the tying the name Ashara to the shadow twice, right, is it sure seems like that's the symbolically the better answer. But then I'm left with no idea how we can get any real impact from Septa Lemore then. But I mean, that's part of the problem, is that both of them ought to be having that level of impact on us, and only one of them can. So
yeah. All right. Well, you got no live stream Friday, right?
Yeah, I'll be at the doctor follow up for operation tomorrow.
All right, so that'll put us on Daenerys for Monday. It gives us a whole weekend to study up. What you say? Trust them. Lizzie says trust the symbolism.
Trust the symbolism. Yeah, symbolism says Quaithe, but then we're still
isn't that
wondering.
that's one mention for Lizzie then, right?
But we're still, yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
we're still left, with well, then who is Septima Moore, right? And
Yeah.
so anyway, well, no matter what we do, whichever one you assign a shark to, it still feels like the other one is left with less impact than it feels like the story demands. So I
Yeah.
don't know how
Oh,
to
I've heard
feel that way.
what Sierra Sea Star or whatever as a potential for Quaith. She
Yeah,
was.
I mean, we know that Melisandre is hundreds of years old, so characters that are hundreds of years old could be
Yeah.
potentially, right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sea Star could be using a different technique than Melisandre. Melisandre glamour, while Sea Star is actually using blood magic to remain young. I mean, there's a lot of unanswers out there on some of the magical women in this story, or extremely important, not seen women so far in the story. But all right,
Definitely
well,
looking
Brendan,
forward. Definitely looking forward to it, Lizzie. Good luck tomorrow, Richard. She says, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I really, um, I'm really looking forward to not having massive distorted double vision and touch from my
there
right
you go.
eye. So, yeah.
I tend to agree with Lizzie on that one, but I can go
Yeah.
either way on it. Like I said,
Yeah. Anyway,
it's not one of those I want to put. It's
well,
not a
since we
hill I
always
want to die on.
right, that's what we always say. It's deliberately ambiguous, and for now we can enjoy whichever one we think gives us a better story until proven otherwise.
I don't have enough information on either for me to make an educated guess or have a a heartfelt opinion on. Uh, that's like before I had any information on anything, I was on board with the N plus A equals J just because that's what my heart wanted. And then from that point on, everything that I've read
I, I
has
actually I actually kept seeing the Order of Greyhand videos pop up as recommended because I've been watching Precedent stuff, right? And
yeah.
um and it's a Merry Christmas from the Snows, and I was like, no, right? And then I can't remember why I finally gave in and watched. Um, and they just blew my mind, right? Especially because I'd always thought that key paragraph, the one where John's name is left out, I'd always thought that it was a little awkward, right? The paragraph just felt wrong somehow, and and when I finally looked at it with their with their eyes, I was like, oh, that fits so much better.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, and then I was listening to History of Westeros, and they mentioned that Rob reminded them of Edward IV. And somebody mentioned this is on like one of their panels that they were on. It's somewhere in their back catalog, or it was. They kind of try to simplify things and things. Um, but at some point they mentioned that didn't he have two wives too? Oh yeah. And I was like, wait a minute, wait, you're saying Rob is the same as Ned, or it's the same as Edward IV, and that Edward IV had two wives, but the Lord of the Green Hand is saying that Eddard had the same exact thing happen with with the marriage pact as Rob did, and then so I was like, oh, and I'd already come up with I'd come up with the Asher one, right? And
Yeah.
I'd come up with that and realized that Asher's name being removed from history was like a shard name.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, some other people must have noticed this before, and of course, lots of people have. And there was a seminary student who said not only Asherah but Asherah Dione. I was like, oh, I had come across the Dione. Oh, yeah. Asherah the Dione. Asherah Dione. Oh, wow. It's like just trying to look through all this stuff and put it all together. Anyway.
Hey, have you seen Jesse Bear Book Club's Elizabeth of York, The Last White Rose?
No.
Well, she was talking about Elizabeth of York, The Last White Rose. She was going through. I only watched part one yet.
That's basically our Sansa, right? The one forced to marry
Yeah. I mean, that was my question to her because she was sitting there going over it. I'm like, man, this got a whole lot of of things in common with Sansa. Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah. The oldest, so his oldest daughter is the one forced to marry the Lancaster claimant after the war, right?
And then the mother determined to protect the children's lineage or their claimant on a crown or whatever.
Sure. And both Elizabeth Butler, is that it? Anyway, both the mother, the second wife, the Catelyn character. One of the reasons why we actually do know some of this is that for example, there's a communication from I think from Henry saying, "Oh, don't worry, I destroyed all the evidence of the pre-contract and the and so forth." Right. So we've got this correspondence, and we've got the mother basically saying that she was worried that her Richard. I had that same light bulb moment as what Lizzie says. Yeah. It's really like, oh wow, it fits. But anyway, but yeah, so some of the correspondence actually is of Elizabeth. Wait, no. Butler is actually Eleanor Talbot is Lady Butler. Elizabeth Woodville. So Elizabeth Woodville would be the mother, and the mother of the Catelyn character, I guess. And she actually had some correspondence where she's expressed the fact that she actually did realize that it looked like her husband had actually taken a previous wife.
So let me get it straight, okay? Before you go any further, the mother, the Catelyn character, has communications about her children being bastards, and we have.
Right, that's what I'm saying. They did try to destroy all the evidence, but what we actually wound up with was some of the correspondence where they talk about it, right? So you've got the mother expressing concern that her marriage may not have been valid, and you've got basically the son, the husband of the Tyrion, if you will, right? The husband saying, "Don't worry, I destroyed all the evidence of the dowry payment in the marriage contract."
Yeah. So you also got the Catelyn character destroying information. You got Catelyn supposedly destroying, burning a little message. I mean,
it's the correspondence that survived. That's the funny thing is.
But as soon as I was watching that and everything, I'm like, man, it sounds a whole lot like Sansa. I asked her, and that wasn't what the video was about. So she said she'd check into it, and she said I can see why you would say that. And I'm like, as soon as I see or talk to Richard, that would be one of the first questions I wanted to ask him, because you're all, you're my encyclopedia for the War of the Roses. So,
and while there are some histories, including like the Wikipedia page, that would tell you that there was one trueborn kid from Eleanor Talbot, it's probably not true. It looks like that's extremely unlikely. But you'll definitely find people that think that there was one kid. You'll find some history that claims that there was one trueborn kid.
Yeah.
I don't think there was, but anyway, based on the Eleanor, the Secret Queen, I was looking through that and the historian there, the Wikipedia.
All right.
We're
sitting at 40
pretty fun
to,
pretty fun to talk through the Toodles stuff and the similarities with the Flinty eyes and so forth.
Yeah, it was the second time you put me onto something Toodles has said, and I definitely want to research it some more.
Sir Chadwick and the elder brother type stuff, right?
Definitely. Yeah. I really like that one. But we won't have Fridays to tell you happy Friday, have a safe weekend. Everybody have a safe weekend. We're cutting this kind of almost 50 minutes, so it's my throat can't take much more.
Definitely.
But I appreciate it, Lizzie. Thank you, Lady Thistle. I appreciate it. I know you're out there, Valancar, Swagger Dagger, our fan favorites, the four horsemen of our channel. So we will see y'all Monday with Daenerys. Have a good weekend, Richard. I hope everything goes okay, and stay safe, man. All right, bye.